The scent of dust and worried men clung to the air in the heart of the Chiricahua stronghold. Nalin, keeper of the horse herds, stood before the council fire, her back straight as the spine of a yucca. Her brother, Taza, barely a man, had been taken by Silas Croft's riders. The charge was cattle theft, a lie thin as a dying man's whisper. Croft wanted the deep water spring on their ancestral land. Taza was merely the excuse he needed to provoke a war he knew he could win. The warrior spoke of blood and vengeance. They would ride on Croft's sprawling ranch, a fortress of adobe and hired guns, and die with honor. Nalin listened, her dark eyes fixed on the flames that danced like angry spirits. She respected their fire, but a moth that flies into a lamp does not burn with honor. It simply dies in ignorance. A frontal attack is a trap, she said, her voice cutting through the heated murmurs. It was not loud, but it carried the weight of her position, earned through years of shrewdly managing the tribe's most valuable asset, their horses. Croft wants us to break ourselves against his walls. He wants our dead to justify his theft. An elder, his face a map of wisdom and sorrow, asked, "Then what is your counsel, daughter of a chief? Do we let the boy be hanged?" Nalin's gaze drifted past the fire toward the distant, hazy line of the Dragoon Mountains. Her mind went back 5 years to a pre-dawn chill and a sight she had never spoken of. 200 of their finest horses, stolen by craftsmen and penned in a box canyon, had reappeared in their home pasture overnight. As the sun bled over the horizon, she had seen a lone figure riding away, a white man on a tired buckskin, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion. He hadn't looked back. He had asked for no payment, no glory. He had simply righted a wrong and vanished. An act of quiet, inexplicable honor. "I will not send our warriors to die in a fool's charge," she declared, her decision solidifying. "I will bring Taza back, but I will do it my way." She left the council with their reluctant blessing hanging in the air. She knew the man's name. In the years since, she had learned it. Caleb Thorne. A man who kept to himself, working a small hardscrabble patch of land 2 days' ride north, a place the desert was always trying to reclaim. He was the key. A ghost from the past she would now summon to settle a new debt. Caleb Thorne was mending a fence when he saw the rider approach. It wasn't the way a posse or a neighbor rode. This was a single figure, moving with the fluid grace of someone who was part of the landscape, not just a traveler upon it. As the rider drew closer, he recognized the intricate beadwork on the doeskin dress, the proud set of her shoulders. Apache. A woman. Alone. He straightened up slowly, his hand resting near the worn handle of his Colt, but making no move for it. He'd learned long ago that sudden movements got you killed in this country. He waited. Nalin reined in her painted mare a dozen feet away, the horse stamping impatiently. She studied him for a long moment, her eyes missing nothing: the sweat-stained hat, the patched elbows of his shirt, the way he stood his ground without puffing his chest out. He was leaner than she remembered, the desert having stripped him of any softness, but his eyes were the same. Steady. "Caleb Thorne," she said. It was not a question. "Ma'am," he replied, his voice raspy from disuse. 5 years ago, 200 horses were returned to my people," she stated, her words precise and unadorned. "They were taken by Silas Croft." Caleb's expression didn't change, but a flicker of something, memory, caution, passed through his eyes. He gave a short, non-committal nod. "Croft's a thief." "He has taken my brother," Nalin continued, her gaze unwavering. "He holds him at his ranch. He will hang him in 3 days to provoke a war for our water. Caleb's jaw tightened. He knew Croft's reputation. The man collected land the way a vulture collected bones. That's a bad business, but it ain't my business. The man who returned 200 horses for no reason might disagree, she challenged softly. I am not asking you to fight our war. I am asking for your skill. You are a white man. You can get close to Croft's ranch in a way my warriors cannot. I need you to help me get my brother back. He looked from her to the vast, empty horizon behind her. Helping her would mean making an enemy of the most powerful man in the territory. It meant losing what little he had, which was mostly just the peace of being left alone. It was a fool's bargain. But then he looked back at her face, at the fierce pride and desperate hope warring in her eyes, and he remembered the sight of those magnificent horses, penned and doomed. He had done the right thing then, when no one was watching. Or so he'd thought. What's the plan? He asked, and he knew he'd already crossed a line from which there was no return. They rode together under a sky the color of a fresh bruise. For the better part of a day, silence was their only companion. Caleb, accustomed to solitude, found it a different kind of quiet. It was active, observant. He could feel her watching him, weighing his every move. He offered her a piece of jerky from his saddlebag. She politely declined, producing her own dried meat and berries. He pointed out a landmark. She gave a curt nod, having already known it. He felt clumsy, an outsider trying to speak a language he didn't understand. He decided silence was the safer option. It was a small choice, but it was the first test he passed. She noted that he didn't fill the space with nervous chatter. He could bear the weight of quiet. They made a cold camp in a rocky arroyo overlooking Croft's ranch. The place was a small town unto itself, a main house like a Spanish mission, bunkhouses, barns, and corrals, all surrounded by a high adobe wall. Guards walked the perimeter, rifles glinting in the moonlight. My warriors are hidden in the hills to the east, Nalin said, her voice a low whisper. They can create a diversion. Caleb scanned the layout, his mind working. A diversion they expect will get them killed. Croft's waiting for it. Look there. He pointed toward a small, heavily fortified outbuilding near the main house. No windows. 1 door, 2 guards. That's where they're holding him. He saw the faint tightening of her jaw. She had seen it too. A direct assault is suicide, he murmured, more to himself than to her. He thought for a long time, the silence stretching between them again. He noticed the way Croft's prize cattle, massive, fat bulls, were kept in a separate, lush pasture, downwind from the main compound. Croft was a rancher. He understood vanity. Croft values his bulls more than his men, Caleb said finally. That's his weakness. His plan was audacious and simple. He would not attack the ranch. He would threaten the cattle. Under the cover of the new moon, he would sneak down to the edge of the pasture and start a controlled grass fire. The dry grama grass would burn fast. Panic over the prize-winning livestock would draw every man, including the guards from the makeshift jail, to fight the blaze. In that confusion, Nalin and 2 of her best warriors could slip over the wall, free Taza, and melt back into the night. Nalin considered it. Her eyes narrowed. Fire is a wild spirit. It does not obey commands. I know this land, Caleb replied, his tone even. The wind will hold steady from the north until dawn. There's a creek bed on the far side of the pasture. It'll act as a fire break. The fire will go where I want it to go. He wasn't boasting. He was stating facts. He respected the land, and in turn, he understood its language. She gave him a long, searching look, then a single, sharp nod. It was her decision. He was merely the tool. The night was black as pitch. Caleb moved like a shadow, his boots making no sound on the rocky ground. He set the fire at the far end of the pasture, a small lick of flame that grew with terrifying speed into a hungry orange line racing across the dry grass, driven by the wind. Shouts erupted from the ranch. Men poured out of the bunkhouses, disorganized and panicked, just as he'd predicted. From his hiding place, Caleb watched the two guards abandon their post at the jailhouse and run toward the blaze. He saw 3 dark shapes detach themselves from the shadows near the eastern wall and slip inside the compound. Nalin. He held his breath. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Then, a new sound. The crunch of boots on gravel. Too close. A 2-man patrol circling wide had stumbled upon his position. Before he could react, he saw them spot Nalin's warriors who were providing cover from just outside the wall. A rifle was being raised. Without thinking, Caleb put his fingers to his lips and let out a sound that split the night. Not a human cry, but the sharp, yipping howl of a coyote, followed by another, then another, seeming to come from the rocks 50 yards to his left. The guards froze, their attention diverted. They peered into the darkness, muttering about scavengers drawn by the fire. The moment of danger passed. The distraction had been enough. Nalin's warriors sank back into the shadows unseen. Soon after, he saw the 4 figures, Nalin, her 2 warriors, and a younger, leaner man, fleeing the compound and disappearing into the night. The plan had worked. They regrouped hours later, miles away, in the safety of the deep canyons. Taza, bruised but alive, clasped Caleb's arm in a gesture of profound gratitude. Caleb just nodded, his attention on Nalin. She was tending to a small cut on her brother's arm. When she finished, she walked over to Caleb, who sat by a smokeless fire. She sat across from him, the firelight casting flickering shadows on her strong features. "The coyote call was a clever trick," she said. It was not praise, but an acknowledgement. From her, it felt like more. He merely shrugged. Seemed like the thing to do. She was quiet for a moment, studying his face. "Why did you bring them back?" "My people's horses. 5 years ago. There was no one to see, no one to pay you." This was the real question, the one she had carried for 5 years. Caleb looked into the darkness beyond the fire. He thought of his own small herd stolen by rustlers years before, a loss that had nearly broken him. He thought of Croft, a man who took things just because he could. "They weren't his to take," he said simply. "It wasn't right." In that moment, the distance between them collapsed. She saw him then, not as a white man, an outsider, but as a man who lived by a code she understood completely. It was a code of honor that had no borders, no language, no skin color. It was just a thing a person either had or did not. He had it. She reached into a pouch at her belt and produced a small, carved wooden cup and a water skin. She poured a small amount of a pale, milky liquid, Tiswin, the fermented drink of her people, and offered it to him. He took it without hesitation and drank. It was a shared communion in the vast, silent dark of the desert. As dawn approached, they prepared to part ways. Caleb figured he'd head south, maybe into Mexico. He knew he couldn't go back to his ranch. It was Taza who delivered the final blow. "Croft's foreman saw you," he said to Caleb, his young face etched with worry. "As they dragged me out, he shouted your name.